good evening, and welcome to episode 16 on the element fire. This is All Things Esoteric Podcast.
I apologize. This is episode 15, not 16. Thank you.
Good evening, Anthony.
Hi.
All right, well, we're going to get right into the fire element this evening. And before we do that, I guess I do want to talk for just a moment about what's going on out there. On everyone's mind, of course, is Ukraine. And that is something I'm not even going to talk about. So many people have drenched the internet with charts in putting the United States, Ukraine, and Russia's charts in a triple level and also by levels, and I mean just all kinds of ways you want to look at it. So I highly encourage you to take a look at what's going on out there. But one thing I do want to mention about the Ukraine chart and the chart this evening, or at least this was at 3:21, p.m., there is an aspect of Mars at 1 degree in our outer sky in Aquarius affecting us all. We've found Mars moving into a new sign from Capricorn to Aquarius. So it is conjunct 1 degree Saturn in Aquarius in the Ukraine chart. We've got Mars, which we'll be talking this evening, coming against Saturn, or, Saturn is resistance. It gets a bad rep, but there's all your restriction. And it's in the second house, which we know pretty well because we've got Uranus in Taurus and our northern Taurus. We've been talking about this. And so we've got resources here. We've got anything to do with anything physical in a person's life, whether it be where they live, it's what they love, what they own, what they wear, all of their resources, all of our personal resources and our attitudes towards those resources. So that's very challenging energy right there, to say the least. And then, of course, conjunct that Mars, Venus at 2 degrees, which has also moved into Aquarius recently. So we have a conjunction of those. Venus that's already got a lot of fire to her herself, being very passionate, with Mars, which is that passionate drive. This is some powerful energy coming at Saturn. So it's also, if you want to look at the outer chart, Venus there is actually bringing that aid to the tension that's there and trying to bring in relational issues. Venus is home in the second house in Taurus, so at least that's where it was at that time. It's probably moved on from there a little bit. But I did want to bring that out. The inner planets are at play here with that middle outer planet Saturn and the restriction, and that's exactly what we're seeing. There's so much to be said about that, but I don't want to spend a lot of time there. This evening, we do have that Mars-Venus conjunction at 2 degrees now. This is at 7 p.m. that I pulled this in Aquarius. And with Venus in Aquarius, friendships, 11th house themes here in Venus. The others are going to be more important at this time. And there's going to be a contemporary view on love relationships. And people's attraction will be very current and up to date, meaning it'll be a very Venusian, if you think of Taurus and Libra and how they are and the way that they express Venus. And Aquarius is the 11th house. We're going to have some very expansive type of interactions going on in the areas of creativity, in the area of our resources, and in the areas, and they're going to be, with Uranus being tied to Aquarius, they're going to be unique. This is where you get this up-to-date kind of edgy change kind of stuff going on. Venus showing herself in a different way, and she's going to be here for 5 weeks, so she's going to be here a while. And conventionalism here and routine in our relationships are not really going to interest us. We're really going in an intellectual stimulation in love when we find Venus sitting in Aquarius. Aquarius is fixed air energy. So not so much a lovey-dovey kind of thing, but a more modern way of looking at Venus. The other planet I want to talk about is Mars, moving in Aquarius this evening at 2 degrees. Mars here is going to give a very unique expression through Aquarian themes. It's going to be innovative, and it's going to have the ability to solve problems. And this is kind of what we are seeing in the Ukraine, going back to that Mars-Saturn, is we're seeing a lot of solutions coming in from them. Like, I don't think, no matter what people think about this war, and I don't want to talk about that and get into that, but I don't think Putin was planning, whether it's nefarious or not or what's going on, that Ukraine was going to have all the aid that they're having. And, like, you've got millionaires and people with a lot of money booking bed and breakfast for people over there, so that the local businesses are being used as a way to get money into the hands of the business and shop owners, who can then take care of their families, which is pretty cool. Venus is going to be tied into that as well, because Venus is money. So unique ways of helping the other through our money, Venus in Aquarius. Other people here with Mars in Aquarius shouldn't presume to tell you what to do, or they will get a swift reaction. Mars kind of bites here in Aquarius. It's Mars operating in fixed, so it's kind of like contained Mars, air. So it has this ability to be kind of very independent. And again, we're going to see Mars there for 5 to 6 weeks. So we're only at 2 degrees. Well, next time we have a podcast, probably be talking about where they've moved and what they're doing. But they are moving in tandem, side by side, working with each other. And with that conjunction, you've got some explosive energy. What else did I want to say? Our sun, which is the fire itself, or part of the understanding of the fire element, is in Pisces at 18 degrees. Fittingly, it's in the 7th house during this podcast, and we are talking about the sun itself to other people. And Virgo is the ascendant, the 1st house, which is a more serious tone and an analytical approach to fire. So I think this is pretty cool, the way that the chart mapped out this evening. And with the sun in Pisces, we've seen a really sensitive, emotional nature that is more about the others, and feelings of empathy and genuine concern and serving others. And there's a softness that comes, especially at this degree. We're getting into the real maturity of Pisces, of the sun at 18 degrees. And this is allowing, we see, how can I put this? We see a real tolerance and a readiness to forgive, and a deeply caring, sympathetic, compassionate, seeing the best in others type of nature. So that is really needed at a time when we were seeing a lot of changes going on around us. You got to remember, as we're going to go into talking about the sun a little bit tonight, the sun plays greatly into our seasons and where it is and affects the seasons. And there's this tandem relationship to Earth and what it's like here for us depending on where the sun is. So there's this yin and yang going back and forth between the sun and humans, and the sun and the element of fire. The other thing I want to bring out is we have a Gemini North Node, Gemini Midheaven with Taurus right up there, conjunct in North Node. So talking about what we just did, Ukraine, which is that 2nd house, Taurus rules the 2nd house. Gemini will be talking about this because it's tucked right there next to it. And themes of what's going on in the 2nd house and what's going on with the way that our lives tie into our individual resources, what's happening to our resources. This is all about gas being what? I don't know. What's gas by you right now?
$4.
Yeah, it's around that here too. I mean, we're seeing it outrageous in parts of the north, and it's gone up. So it's affecting everything. All these changes with the resources. And the North Node is at 24 degrees.
Well, there may be some hope in that, because currently there are United States ambassadors in Venezuela with their hat in their hands, vehemently apologizing for trying to overthrow their government just a few years ago. Please give us some of that oil. So that actually, there is some hope for the gas prices that's going on right now.
Right on. No, we're not even going to touch that. We have a Gemini moon, which is why we're not even going to touch that. Gemini moons are no joke. I have a Gemini 8th house in my chart, because I'm a Scorpio ascendant, but I have, if you go Placidius, I have Venus and the moon in the 8th house in Cancer. If you do whole house, everything moves into the 9th, which is more, really feels like what I am than the 8th. But man, a moon sitting in there with Gemini around is somebody that is going to have a strong need to communicate what's going on in their feelings. And have we not seen this? People just coming out of the woodwork talking about things.
We've had this for the past, whatever it was, 60 years or so, right? It used to be that only certain people had opinions on, like, politics, and those people were, like, the nerdy types. They read a lot of books on, like, international affairs and economics and shit, and that was a better time. And now everyone thinks they have every political and economic solution.
Everybody's got an opinion because look at what we're doing. I guess, we're just sharing information that we have found, and I guess sharing our personal experiences, but I'm just a door.
Yeah, I don't bring anything without a source. Mostly I try not to.
Right. We have sources for everything we do. We really do. We try to cite them or put them in there, not trying to take anyone's information. We're just gatherers and researchers, and we're curious. But there are people who aren't that way. They come on and they're like, this is the way it is, and there's no tolerance or openness for any other opinions, and I can't roll that way, Yeah. I know you can't either. Moon in Gemini is also going to bring Mercury into play, and Mercury is all about the intellect, and there's going to be an ability to control the emotional life with the moon in Gemini. So there's plus sides to it as well. But it's certainly a time for lively discussion. Lively discussion. Are you ready to have lively discussion?
I am tired of lively discussion.
You're tired of it?
Tired of it. It's been too much.
You have a lot of lively discussion in your life?
No, it's just, the energy in the country, the past, 6 years.
I got you. No, I got you.
There's too much. People need to, stop thinking they know everything and just be quiet and move on.
It's tough when everybody's got a phone with the internet and they can just Google shit right there, It's like, wow.
Everyone can find something that supports their opinion.
That I think that is just a pitch right now for less social media is I purposely have been leaving my phone, and I'll go out all day and not just leave it at home. And not even bring it with me. When my husband and I, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, but whenever we go out to dinner, unless we need it, like we're going to look something up together and do it together, we leave our phones.
So we keep going for a while with that, but yeah.
We sure could. Well, here we go. Here's what I have on fire. And the main thing that I found in the fire element, and we're going to talk about it as it shows up in other types of modalities like astrology and tarot, and I talk about the chakras, but we're going to hit all this. I just want to give a little bit of an overview, what I found, and hear what you have to say. Fire, to me, after all the studying I've done, equals the transformative power that's out there. It's transformation at its best. It's dry, the south, masculine, yang, outward, upward energy. It's passion, consuming and expanding in radiance. It's stimulating, illuminating, and brilliance. Think of the sun itself. And the colors associated with the fire element are red, which are the 3 lower chakras. However, when added to the tarot, it does include some of the upper chakras. Fire is a terrestrial manifestation of the sun, the central force in our solar system. The light of the sun creates photosynthesis, which turns light into matter, which would be a tree, which we then cut down and we burn. And this is why when we burn it, it burns so brightly. The flame itself is inside the wood. Isn't that fascinating?
Yes.
I mean, the sun itself is stored in wood and everything else that grows, including us.
We eat fire. I mean, fire equals energy, I guess.
Yes. It's that courageous, strong, passionate, relentless inner spark that we have. The inner fire, the physical energy, the inner activating power. It's represented by a triangle, so that's the point going upward, signifying that positive, as they say in astrology, positive and negative. Positive is outward or upward energies. Negative is receptive, inward energies. So not negative as in bad, just the opposite of positive. This is where we see in our lives the sun shows up, fire shows up in our creative efforts and projects, and in the way we love, in the way that we express our love, in the things that we create and what we do. It's a very doing. Fire is very active. It can warm or it can destroy. So again, we see polarity with fire. And I wanted to read something. I'll hand this over to you. But it's from a book entitled Eastern Body, Western Mind, Psychology in the Chakra System as a Path to the Self. It's by Anita Judith in regards to the element of fire and movement, page 171. I quote, now, this is in the context quickly of discussing the root, which comes first, chakra, and then the sacral. And from those two base chakras, we have the solar plexus, which is where fire is. And so she's talking about what we must do with the root and the sacral to get our fire to be where it should be. Be willing to leave passivity behind. We must be willing to leave the way it has always been, to transform our habits, set a new course, and enter chakra 3. We must be willing to individuate, to step out of the familiar and expected and confront the challenge of uncertainty. Thus, to be independent of public opinion is the first formal condition of achieving anything great, says Hegel. Thus, to be independent of public opinion is the first formal condition of achieving anything great. And that is by Hegel. You must be the change you wish to see in the world, says Gandhi. Friction makes sparks. Fire transforms matter to heat and light and gives us the ability to see and to act. Fire awakens from our passive slumber, sparking consciousness into understanding. Understanding tempers the fire, binding raw energy into power, direction, and transformation. Thus we enter the fiery yellow section of our rainbow bridge on the unfolding journey from matter to consciousness. So astrology believes that the celestial phenomena reflect or influence human activity on the principle of as above, so below, which I know you've heard. And it's the concept that was first laid out in the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus. Is that how you say his last name?
Trismegistus?
Yes,
I
have a hard time saying his last name. Yes. That which is below corresponds to that which is above. That which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And we're the one thing. I really believe that. That's what he means there. You know, above, below, and in the middle is us. And in the middle is our solar plexus, our belly, our guts. And that is where the fire resides. So within astrology, the fire and the air elements are represented as masculine, active, and light. Within the astrological zodiac wheel, fire is represented in 3 houses. These are the first, which is Aries, cardinal fire, how we look, how we act in public, our mask we see through, the ascendant. The 5th, Leo, fixed fire, our self-expression, and any effort that we put forth that distinguishes ourselves from others. The children we create, the books we write, the factions we display, the stuff like this. The 9th is Sagittarius, which is mutable fire, and it's the house of spirit, the realm of the superconscious, ingrained religions, and our philosophies of self, others, and the world. So regarding the first house, which is also known as the ascendant or the rising sign because it's considered to be one of the most significant houses, also known as an angle house, which is one of 4. These 4 houses are the most powerful due to the fact that they are active on a material level and play strongly on the personal self and its affairs. So as we're getting into the first house here, understand that this is a place of a material plane. And the other areas that this occurs is the 4th house, which is Cancer, cardinal water, representing the home, the most sensitive part of the chart. The 7th house, which is Libra, cardinal air, which represents the others. And the 10th house, the zenith or midheaven, this is Capricorn's domain, cardinal earth, representing our career or what we will to do in the world. So as we go through the elements, remember these cardinal angles are really, really important. 1, 4, 7, and 10. So when we have our first position of fire showing up in the first house, in an angle house, it becomes like we highlighted it with a highlighter. It becomes way more significant and way more important, which is why many people think the ascendant is one of the most important houses and any aspects to it on the entire chart. And we never want to isolate, ever. We have to consider the whole chart, because you'll see a lot of sensationalism online where people isolate, and they'll be like, oh my God, I have a Venus in Virgo. And like they do a whole paragraph on it. And it's like, I know Venuses and Virgos that don't have an issue with it, you know. Not everybody is the same. We have to look at the whole chart. But a word on the ascendant and the power that resides in this first house. You know, it's run by Aries, which is the god of war, and he's the first sign appearing within the zodiac. Mars is also present, as Mars is the ruling planet of Aries and Scorpio. So this is off of Wikipedia on the ascendant, and I've shared on the ascendant a lot, but I love the way, actually, that they did this. They say this of the ascendant. Now think of this as we go into Aries in a minute, and we start talking about Aries, which rules and runs the first house. Now, you may not have Aries there, but you will be using Aries energy because you're home with him there. And that's his domain. So his energy is always going to have to be considered in that first house. A word on the ascendant is this. The ascendant in the astrological sign and degree of that sign that is ascending on the eastern horizon at the specific time and location of an event, this is called the ascendant. So it's that eastern horizon when you were born that day, what sign was sitting there as the sun was rising. Some astrologers consider that the ascendant signifies a person's awakening consciousness in the same way that the sun's appearance on the eastern horizon signifies the dawn of a new day. So we have the first house being a firehouse, and also it's the dawn of a new day. Now we're seeing the sun come in. And we all know the power of the rising sun, right? There's no stopping it. It rises every single day. Because the ascendant is specific to a particular time and place, to astrologers it signifies the individual environment and conditioning that a person receives during their upbringing, and also the circumstances of their childhood. For this reason, astrologers consider that the ascendant is also concerned with how a person has learned to present themselves to the world, especially in public and in impersonal situations. To astrologers, in some circumstances, it can function as a shield or mask to guard a person's real nature. It functions as an interface between the many levels of personality makeup and the external reality. The ascendant has a strong bearing on a person's physical appearance and overall health. So this is what you look like, the personal self. So if, for instance, my husband has Saturn, he's a Scorpio sun, Scorpio ascendant, so double fixed nature, and the sun and the ascendant, and he has Saturn in Scorpio in his first house. I mean, he's not going anywhere. The guy's double fixed, and he's got Saturn sitting there. So you'll often find me being way more cardinal, you know, even though fixed is one of my strongest attributes in my chart. But you'll see me, because the Cancer is cardinal, you'll see me be way more cardinal, and he's just kind of like, I don't know. It's hilarious how it shows up. And the restrictions there also, personally, that have occurred to him in the first house that, you know, we can attribute to events in his life. It's pretty interesting the way the first house really does show what happens to a person physically. You know, speech impediments, things like this. If you're a Leo ascendant, chances are your hair looks like a Leo. You can have longer hair. You can have flowing hair. There can be something very flamboyant about you. So first house is super huge. Its chief characteristic is action and destiny in the making. The first house is action and destiny in the making. It defines the disposition and outlook on life a person will display. Our ascendant is the window through which we see the world. So with that, I'm going to let you talk about Aries and the first house, who rules that place.
Right. And with the astrology in general, as you mentioned, the cardinal, the fixed, and the mutable, it's also useful to know that the cardinal is the sulfur, the fixed is the salt, and the mutable is the mercury. If we're talking about alchemical mercury, yeah. Sulfur and salt, of course.
That's crucial.
Sulfur being the masculine, essentially, salt being the feminine, and mercury being the hermaphroditic. And as we study the tarot cards, specifically when we get into them, these sulfur, mercury, and salt attributes actually are on display quite nicely, as you'll see. So, a little bit on the description of, it says in Aries person, but doesn't have to necessarily mean your sun is in Aries. You might have, you know, strong Aries energy if you have multiple planets in Aries, Aries in the first house, you know, not necessarily your sun in Aries. This is from Your Place in the Sun, officially authored by Evangeline Adams and heavily rumored to be ghostwritten by Aleister Crowley. So, Aries is the pioneer among the signs. He may not discover a new continent, but he is the man with the axe who makes the clearing for the settlement. He is capable of initiative, but lacks persistency in execution. The right orders being given, though they may be accepted with some impatience, are carried out with immense energy. There is something of the cavalryman about the Aries. If his charge is successful, well and good, but if it is broken, he can do little to repel a counterattack. The characteristics of the ram are singularly strong in these people. They are extraordinarily aggressive and self-willed, Their ambition is boundless, and opposition merely excited them to greater effort. At the same time, they occasionally lose interest in a matter as suddenly as they take it up. They are headstrong, excitable, and impulsive.
And all God's people said amen if you know an Aries. Which I do. It's cardinal.
I appreciate Aries women. They like to flirt by butting heads and roasting, and it can be quite funny, but sometimes they just don't know when to fucking stop.
Yeah, and I think something that's really important to note about an Aries, and we're not there are so many awesome attributes as well. We need them. We need all the zodiac signs. We need them in balance. But Aries want to get things moving. Think about it. They're the first house, which is why I laid that framework so strongly, and the first sign. They are the seed bursting through the earth in spring. I mean,
it's what they love to do.
Yes, they love to assert.
The Rams butt heads for fun, and like that's their play. I mean, eventually they do it as fighting, but growing up, that's how they play fight. They butt heads. That's just what they enjoy doing.
Yeah, let me read for a second and then jump back in. Isabel Hickey from Astrology, A Cosmic Science, the classic work on spiritual astrology. Man, everybody should own this book if you want to study astrology. It's phenomenal. She did so much in this book. It's incredible. But she says, Aries is I am, and it represents the uprushing fountain of life. So it's almost like, let me put it this way. Aries is the act of sex and the ejaculation, but then it leaves. It doesn't stick around after. You understand what I'm saying?
Very shockma.
Yeah, and I'm not
Jupiter
saying it's,
forces
I'm not
to stay around to manage and build.
Yeah, it's the fire of the head, the untamed fire of impulse. Let's remember this now. We didn't say this. This is esoteric writings. It's the untamed, meaning there's some work to be done here. It's new. It rules the head and the physical body, like the heart, the throat, the solar, the sacral, the root. All these other chakras got to get going in here too. It cannot be just the head. He's the god of war. He's the point of all beginnings. The person with his sun in Aries is in the process of building a personality. Think about that. All the energies are self-centered and self-directed. This is why. Before one can give oneself away, there must be something to give. So he's the I am, the me first, and it's the key word of this self-assertive Aryan. What are the qualities of the Ram that are so symbolic of Aries? Leadership, strength, charging forth to butt their heads against any obstruction in their way. Such are the qualities of the undeveloped Ariana. Impatient, unwilling to wait for events to mature. They are apt to rush in where angels fear to tread. Aryans are the pioneers of the zodiac. Like you said, my son is in Aries, and he was the guy in Iraq and Afghanistan. I didn't find out till later through stories from other people that were with him. He went where people are like, what are you doing? He just was like, God's with me, man. I'm good. And he's like, no, God told me I'm not going to die over here. Spirit told me I'm not going to die over here. And he didn't. And he's a good guy. He's been through a lot. Okay, so what else you got on Aries?
That's all I got on Aries.
Right,
I had the tarot, but you wanted to just flip that up to later.
Wait, let's do astrology. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Mars a minute. Remember when we did the podcast? It was a while ago because you're going back to the inner planets, but Mars has to be talked about for a moment because it is the ruling planet of Aries. And without Mars, nothing happens. Nothing happens without Mars. You can have all the desire that you want to put forth something up, but if you don't have Mars helping you, the vitality of it all isn't present. And Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. It's a potent planet that I wrote cannot be underestimated in its potential, passion, and fury. And Isabel Hickey says of Mars so eloquently, this is desire, energy, and action, page 40. Mars is the planet of desire and dynamic energy, the planet of action. It shows the urge and energy to accomplish, build, and progress. So remember, Mars is immature fire. And so it's got all this energy. It's got all this explosiveness. And it doesn't know so much how to be persistent with it. It knows how to just express. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So one way to realize our desires is to work and earn. And through this, we develop the ability to hold our own against economic competition, gain self-confidence, and learn self-discipline. Mars is also the planet of war. So whenever we see Mars in a chart, astrologers always sit back and take a look at, okay, what's going on with Mars? Because all the planets are there, but without Mars, nothing really activates, if that makes sense. It doesn't direct the energy more better. And Mercury intellectually helps direct that energy, but Mars is the body energy. And through war, we experience hatred or heroism, killing or self-sacrifice, and we find courage and endurance we did not know we had. So the basic energy, she says, of Mars is dynamicness, impulsiveness, leadership, courage, expression, independence, general force, forcefulness, practicality. And here's the negative. And think here about some of our leaders: domination, defiance, violence, combativeness, foolhardiness, sarcasm, separateness, passion directed in the wrong way, cruelty, and destructiveness. Positive is enthusiasm, forcefulness, spontaneity, assertiveness. See, we have to remember that we talked about this in the Mars episode, we need some assertive Mars energy. We can't be without borders and boundaries and not have form. You know what I mean? Like not have a purpose for our energy.
Yep. Aggression versus assertiveness.
Yeah, that's excellent. There it is. That is perfect. Frankness, self-reliance, transmutation. This is where we get Scorpio in the 8th house. The 8th house is transmutation. Fearlessness. I love that. Mars makes you fearless, and it should. Right? It's the 1st house. It's like, whoa. So what's really good to know is, where is Mars in a person's chart when you're looking at the 1st house, depending on that sign, what's going on, and constructive. So with that, let's go into, I guess, the next house, right? That was Aries.
I just wanted to say real quick, it's important to study all these symbols for this reason. We just talked about Mars because Mars rules Aries. You can get a better understanding if you understand Mars. You can get a better understanding of Mars if you understand Gabora, its sphere on the tree of life. You can better understand Gabora if you understand its opposite, she said. Like, all these symbols stack and inform each other. And we should also mention that the sun is exalted in Aries.
Yes, thank you very much for getting to the sun in Leo. It is exalted in Aries. That is correct. Yes, very good to look at the dignities. You always bring that up. I appreciate it. All right, so the 5th house is the next house, and this connects us to Leo, fixed fires, the ego. Therefore, the sun now comes into the picture. And the symbolism for the sun is a circle with a dot in the middle in astrology. The circle representing the internal self that did not start here, will not end here, and the dot in the center represents a divine spark at the center of every living cell. This is from the book, The Light which lighteth every man which cometh into the world. It is the point of light at the center of every living cell. So when we think of cells, you have the center, you have the nuclei. That's where the life is. That's where the center is. That's exactly how the sun is in our solar system. And the solar plexus really is in the center because it's the digestive tract, and that ties into the brain. And then there's a whole lot you can talk about the brain being the second mind. Have you heard this? And how, digestion, the small intestine, and the gut, and how this is directly tied to our vitality.
They found multiple large nerve clusters in our stomach and in other organs, like nerve clusters that are, the nerves are so dense you only see that in like brain matter, and they're still figuring out what exactly is going on.
Yeah, there's a Japanese guy, and I really apologize, I don't know your name, sir. I believe you're Japanese, but he wrote the book, I think, The Stomach, the Second Mind, or something. If you Google it or go to YouTube, you might be able to find him. But he did this whole talk on that. It might have been a TED Talk, I saw it. But he talked about that. So the 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th houses are called the succeedent houses. These houses, remember 1, 4, 7, and 10 are angle houses? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
2, 5, 8, and 11 are succeedent houses, and these houses connect us more deeply to our emotional nature and our individual desires. So, coming into the 5th house, we're now bringing the sun into the picture, and the sun within our chart represents the main expression of an individual. It's the very heart, it's the very core of our beingness. I want to read what she has to say here about the sun, and then let's get into Leo and hear what you have to say. She says, the sun is the significator of the spirit in man, page 38, the beingness of isness of life, the immortal part of man's complex manifestation. It rules the basic drive for significance, the will to be. This is where we get the ego. Whenever you think of the sun, Leo's ruling planet, we must think of the ego. Physically, the sun is the sustainer of life, giver of life, heat and energy. More than anything else in the chart, it shows the will, man's highest expression. Its aspects show deep character traits, the chief ambitions. It needs aspects to the planets for strength of expression in the horoscope. So the sun itself, again, going back to Mars, it's really not enough. You have to point the energy. You have to use the energy. See what I'm saying? And the aspects are the trines and the sextiles and the squares and the opposites. As the sun moves through the signs, it returns to the sign of its exaltation, Aries. The eastern horizon marks the beginning of the astrological year. Springtime brings the release of a new cycle of life. As the sun moves through the houses, it returns to the eastern horizon. Its return is the beginning of the astrological day, sunrise. That's why if you're born early in the morning, you're always going to see the house around the first house. Excuse me, your sun, I apologize. Your sun sign, who you are, your core, your will, your essence, right around the first house, because there's times that represent houses as well. So the sun is self-consciousness, strength, authoritativeness, positivity, individualism, power, leadership, confidence, courage, and faith. So the sun's a lot like Mars, isn't it? Kind of ties in there, except Mars really doesn't have an ego. Mars could care less where its energy is going. It just has energy. It just wants to give it out. It just wants to express it. So with that, let's go into Leo and hear what you got going on with Leo, and then I'll share what I have.
I have a little bit more from your place in the sun. The moral character of the native of Leo can be understood by those who have made an intimate study of the rights of the sun god. He is the royal and tragic figure, intensely conscious alike of his glory and of his fate, and possessing infinite confidence in his resurrection. He thus represents humanity in its royal and sacramental sense. He bears constantly within himself this subconscious knowledge. The typical organ of Leo is the heart. The Leo native hasn't perhaps the analytical understanding of the universe which we shall find associated with Aquarius. His understanding is subconscious. But in one respect, he excels even the native of Aquarius, for not only does he regard all of life as one from century to century, but he perceives it as a sacred ceremony of a holy divine character. Of course, in the ordinary type, this amounts to little more than the exercise of the three cardinal virtues, faith, hope, and love. But in the greatest types, there is a perception of the entire universe as an eternal feast, an endless pageant of joy, in which suffering is but an incident necessary to emphasize the reality of happiness. Adversity is needed to bring out the true sweetness of character, and it is only in the climate which has a touch of frost that the fullest flavor is found in fruit. That is such beautiful fucking writing.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Who is that? I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's officially authored by Evangeline Adams, but pretty much everyone accepts it was ghostwritten by Aleister Crowley.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he is an amazing author.
It is very beautiful. It is very poetic, yes.
Yeah.
And how apropos. That was very well said.
And also wanted to mention, also in this book, he attributes Uranus to being exalted in Leo.
Yes, but Leo would make it all about himself. It's better to be in Aquarius. Yeah, no, Leo would make it all about himself. Absolutely. He'd want it all in his lair for himself. Like, he'd be like, fine, but it's going to stay here in my house. Yeah, so he could enjoy it. Leo is the sun itself, is the ego. This is fixed fire. You know, this is a mutable fire or cardinal fire. This is fixed. It stays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of look at it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. So, Leo is ruled by the sun, obviously, a positive, outgoing sign, fixed fire. I have a Leo midheaven. Every Scorpio ascendant has a Leo midheaven. My husband and I, both Scorpio ascendants, so our houses are, all of the houses are the same, which makes life so much easier because we basically see things at the foundational level anyway. Found that out. But anyway, Leos, Leo, you know when a Leo's in a room. Do you know many Leos?
No.
Oh, I love Leos. Most cancers do love Leos. Leos are awesome. But let's talk about the sun a minute in Leo. Page 46, she says, let's consider the sun the symbol of spirit, the life force of the universe. It is the greatest dynamo of all. It rules Leo, sign that rules the spine and the heart in the physical body. So it's cool the way the heart got tied in. That's will, spine, and love, heart are the motivating powers of desire and the will to be. You've heard grow a spine, will ya? Right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's where that comes from. In August, sign of Leo, the sun is all-powerful as far as self-consciousness is concerned. The sun in the heavens is at its greatest power. This is true in August, right? It's the hottest time of the year. So you have to think about when the sun shows up here inside of Leo, just how hot it is. This is why, the fifth house is known as the house of bed pleasures. It's the house of where your love expresses itself. It's self-expression itself. So it's really good to understand it's an emotional house where this fire shows up. And there's a want of expression here. There's children in this house shows up in the natal chart. So she says of Leo, Leo is the sign of self-consciousness, as Cancer is the sign of the instinctual conscious. Whether Leo people are constructive or destructive in their approach to life depends on who drives their chariot, self or self. I'm telling you, man. Every Leo I've ever known has been like this. You know, they're very generous and they're givers, but they're definitely all about themselves. Leos have great courage, but unless they have a sense of responsibility and are willing to take discipline of their own accord, they can bring great difficulties upon themselves. One of Leo's key words is dominion. This does not mean dominion over others, a trap Leo needs to learn to avoid, but dominion over their own subjugated forces. That's where the strength card comes in. Leo is the most vital of the signs and has tremendous energy. They have a confidence and an assurance that strengthens those who are timid and angers those who are seeking the power inherent in Leo. Leo is the royal and kingly sign of the zodiac. In an age where kings are a thing of the past, Leos need the realization that the royalty of the Aquarian age will be the spiritual who function through the heart and soul in real simplicity. What is simplicity but going to the inner heart of things and seeing things whole? Leo rules the inner center, the heart. So I love the way she brings that out in Leo, that it really is going to have to, as all things do, change and grow and kind of be like, yes, I'm the king of the woods, but there's other kings in the woods. And I have to work with, is a higher understanding of Leo's energy, I think, that needs to evolve. And all the other signs have this too. You know, we all have to move and grow. But I think that sometimes that's not always taught about Leos, you know. We just think of them as just being these egomaniacs. And it's like, no, some Leos actually get this. And this is where the generosity can come in, you know, and they can be great givers. So, anything else you wanted to say on Leo before we move on to Sag?
No, let's move on.
Okay, so the last firehouse is the 9th and is Sagittarius, which is mutable fires, and it's ruled by Jupiter, the huge, big, expansive planet. And we did a podcast on Jupiter. You can go listen all about Jupiter and how girthy Jupiter is. It's the largest planet within our solar system. So whenever you think of Jupiter, you have to think of expansiveness. And we've got mutable fire here in the 9th house. So let's take a look at what she says about Sagittarius here quick. Actually, why don't you go first? Why don't you talk about Sagittarius?
All right. So, from your place in the sun, the sigil of this sign is the rainbow. Being ruled by Jupiter, the temperament of its native is expansive and altruistic. It is sometimes called the prophetic sign, as the objective and subjective mind work harmoniously together under its vibrations. The Sagittarian is a born idealist. He is the young man who sees visions and the old man who dreams dreams. But there is no unpracticability in his idealism, for he is capable of foreseeing the outcome of a transaction from its very inception, and the activity and directness of his character is typified in the ancient pictorial representation of Sagittarius as a centaur who holds a bow outstretched, about to speed an arrow straight to its mark.
You know, I've never heard that said that way before, and I really appreciate you bringing in the part about the dreamer. And say it again. Was he a dreamer? And
it is sometimes called the prophetic sign. Sagittarian is a born idealist. He is the young man who sees visions and the old man who dreams dreams.
Just everything about that is appealing to me. You know, I have a stellium in the 9th house, which is 3 to 4 or more planets. I actually have like 7 placements there. So not 7 planets, but 7 placements. My North Node is there as well, and so is Hecate. We did a podcast on her as well. She sits 26 degrees on my 26-degree Cancer sun in the 9th house. That's crazy, right? So you think of the house energy that she's wishing to use, that archetype is wishing to use through my life. Wow. This, the realm of the superconscious mind, the 9th house, deeply ingrained religious philosophy of the self, higher education, intuition, inspiration, spiritual visions, long journeys. This is all 9th house, the expansion of both mental and spiritual. Also, something to be said about the chart. When we move past the 5th, up and out of the 5th, we're now seeing, once we hit the 7th house, through the 12th. Although the 12th actually is hidden, I apologize. You're going back in upon yourself to, ascend again and start the chart all over. But the 9th house is a very visible house. It's right next to the midheaven, which is the zenith. So you can be seen here. And that's important to note, too, when it comes to the 9th house. But did you have more on Sagittarius?
No.
That's it? Okay. They're the mental plane. The more intellectual. It's the 3rd, the 9th, and the 11th. That makes sense, because those have to do with the intellect. So that's where the mental and the higher thinking comes into play when we're looking at anything that's within the 9th house or anything that has to do with Sagittarius. So that's why you have that archer pulling back and shooting for truth, going straight out the centaur. And, the houses are divided into 4 trinities. The trinity of life, which is 1, 5, and 9. The trinity of association and relationships, which is 3, 7, and 11. And the trinity of wealth, temporal, or possessive houses, which is 2, 6, and 10. Then the trinity of psychism, which is the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th. Those would be the water houses. So you can see the chart, and this is why I wanted to bring in what each kind of house means. It's important because where things show up, where your planets show up, is going to have that house's flavor and the sign that rules and the ruling planet. All of that is to take into consideration. So Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. This is a positive masculine sign. Mutable fire. And Sagittarians, according to Isabel Hickey, page 23, is the natural ruler of the 9th house, which governs understanding in the superconscious mind. The symbol of the sign is represented by the centaur, like you said, half human and half animal, carrying a bow aiming heavenward. This represents his attempt to liberate himself from his lower nature and become that which he already is on the higher plane.
And also, Sagittarius being mutable, it's the Mercury of fire. Mercury is the hermaphroditic, the combining of opposites, the man, the human, as we're going to see in the tarot card, two separate people. So it works out.
Absolutely. There are 2 very different types of Sagittarians. Only the synthesis of the outer planets will tell you which type is operating. Outer planets are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The bridge planets are Jupiter and Saturn, and the inner planets were the Sun, the Moon, the Sun, everything revolves around the Sun, but the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. The average Sagittarian individuals are friendly, outgoing, optimistic, and extroverted in their approach to life. So I have a 9th house Sagittarius, and then I have a Leo midheaven. This is where that extroversion is. But I have very feminine planets there. So that's where I can come back in upon myself and, withdraw and really need to withdraw. I can give out and I can be expressive, but then I have to take time, like we were talking earlier, to recharge the batteries. And probably most people are like that. But some people, aren't. Some people can just want to be with people all the time, and they don't have a need. We're all different. So to each their own, just do what works for you. And the keywords that she links here to that planet the expander. And it also, wherever Jupiter is, it's considered the great benefic. It's the only planet that's called that in the chart, the greater benefic. It's the largest planet, and it does things on a really, really large scale. So if you have a lot of inner planets in the 9th house, this is an individual that doesn't do things small. And I have the Sun and the Moon and Venus there, and the North Node, and Hecate, and a couple other asteroids. So there's a mission there, right? Especially with the North Node. There's something there for me to dive into, which I finally am, moving away from that South Node in the 3rd house, the opposite of the North Node, which is the very practical mental wisdom I was in when I was in the financial services realm. I'm totally moving out of that up into the 9th house. It's really cool to see how that worked out. Who would have known? Jupiter is generous. This is where you can see this in Sagittarians, who they can be overgivers. They can give too much, wanting to maybe appease something within. They can be too expansive and give way too much, and then they're not left with anything. And so that's something that you need to be careful wherever you see Jupiter. It can be too much. So this is a very expansive and optimistic energy. And when it's afflicted, it can be overconfident, exaggerates, extravagant, conceited, fond of display, and goes to excess in many things. I thought this was interesting. Jupiter is also the preserver. The first I had seen that before. We preserve food in tin cans. Tin is Jupiter's metal.
Oh, well, I think we just call them tin. We don't actually use tin anymore because tin is actually toxic. It all got replaced with aluminum.
This is true. This is an older book. That's why she said that. He is active and conservative in religious and philosophical activities, favoring the more orthodox and established religions. Ritual and ceremony are correlated with the Jupiterian energy. So Jupiter is a planet of the higher mind. He lifts man's eyes up, takes man out of himself, and stimulates aspiration, idealism, tolerance, understanding, and vision. Jupiter also likes to live to the utmost, making times, dissipating time, opportunity, money, and energy. So you've got to be careful with your Jupiter is what I want to say here in Sagittarius, because it can do too much. That makes sense.
Hi, I'm just popping in here. We are having some technical difficulties with a portion of the recording as I'm doing editing here, so I'm going to have to give you a little bit of a background as we go into where this is picking up. And we were talking about the fire element being associated with the 3rd chakra, which is the solar plexus. And we've made other references to that before this, but I pick up by telling a story about the thicket that Raj and I was clearing out on our property, and how this ties into the solar plexus and relationships, and how our fire is best seen in relationships and tested in relationships and things like this. So that's the background before we pick up again. And we're sorry about the audio issues. We're trying to work on that. I am in a very rural area, so fortunate to even get internet at all where I'm at. And I think that that's part of the challenge. So we just appreciate your patience. Thank you. Blessed be.
Have you ever seen a thicket? I'm sure in pictures you know what I'm talking about. But have you ever worked in a thicket where you've had to pull the thicket away from it being wrapped all around trees and vines and all this growth around? Have you ever had to do that?
No.
Okay, well that's what is in my woods when I moved here. And we're finally almost done with this last big section. And today we tackled it because I'm like, dude, we got to get out there and ground this shit, man. You know, we just need to go work. It'll really help us. And he's like, yeah. So we went out there for like 2 hours. And what you do is vines that are like rosebush vines. They have these tiny little, they're thickets. They're horrible.
Yeah.
And they're vines, so you can't use like a saw. You have to cut it with shears. So you have to really hacking away, and it's just brutal. It's brutal physical work. And it's what happens then are these, and the reason it gets like that is because prior to that, there's these thickets that grow and they wrap around trees and they'll tear down anything. They choke it out. They wrap it really tight where I've saved whole sections of my woods by unwrapping and catching it early enough, but it leaves grooves in the bark.
Oh, wow.
And it's kudzu. And Indians make jam out of it, and they also used it to wrap things up with. Yeah, man, this shit's legit, okay? So there was like, I don't know, 20, 30 yards of one batch of this, and it's like 30, 40 feet high. I'm not kidding. And
what?
When you think about what the sun did to grow that, right, the synthesis that took place, and I was working on the very transformation of what the sun did, but how it can damage and destroy. I think I'm going to talk about this tonight, that story, but how it can destroy if not checked. See, we have to balance that fire, because when it's not checked, it's left to its own device. All right, so when looking at the tarot, we find multiple layers of symbolism and ancient knowledge. And knowledge that, when understood and personally applied, can enable the Fool, which is the 0 card in the major arcana, the initial card, on his soul journey. So the wisdom can be seen and found through the interpretation of the imagery and colors, as well as through the science and written texts of the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, tied to the Golden Dawn there, numerology, astrology, feng shui, the chakra system, the meridian lines, the energetic points within the energetic body, the I Ching, runes, crystals, and others. But at the root and the base of tarot, we find the 4 elements of fire, earth, air, and water. In a book titled Beyond the Basics, Gain a Deeper Understanding of the Meanings Behind the Cards by Anthony Lewis, he underscores the importance of understanding the 4 elements by saying, page 182, understanding the 4 elements will give the reader a fundamental understanding of tarot symbolism that cannot be achieved by any other means. So I think that's really important to note that, and I never looked at the tarot that way. I've read, oh goodness, much, and I have many books, and I'm sure you have too. Although you tend to stick with the Thoth deck, and you're a purist, aren't you?
I like what I like.
Yeah. That's good. We do that, man. I kind of like to read a lot of things and expose myself to a lot of different authors, but not that you don't. But anyway, we first see the elements through the Greek philosopher Empedocles of Sicily. And this was around 492 to 432 BCE. He would explain the world within the terms of 4. Roots of all things is what he called them. The roots of all things, the 4 elements. As time progressed, other philosophers would call them the 4 roots or 4 elements. And the tarot is based on all this understanding, this basic root base that we have of the 4 elements. Not to be redundant, but it's important that it comes from somewhere. Where we get it, it goes way back. Way back. We see a lot of it in Egyptian writings. It's incredible what's back there. His work brought him to believe that in the beginning there existed 2 primal and opposing forces in the universe, love and strife. And on that note, I want to read something from the book here that he said. These primal forces acted on the 4 elements causing them to interact and form the material universe. So it was love and strife. Love and strife. Love, philia in Greek, seeks harmonious union and is associated with the Greek goddess Aphrodite or the Roman Venus. Strife, nikos in Greek, seeks differentiation and is associated with the Greek war god Ares or the Roman god Mars. Love brings together, strife pushes apart. Psychoanalysts will see a parallel between Empedocles' notions of love and strife and Freud's idea of libido and thanatos, the death instinct. Physicists will recognize Empedocles' description of the action of love in the natural world and Newton's theories about the force of gravity. Modern cosmologists will see a parallel between Empedocles' strife and the dark energy still pushing the universe apart so many years after the Big Bang. In the Tarot, the even-numbered cards come under the influence of love and often depict scenes of harmony, giving, union, contemplation, or repose. The odd-numbered cards, lacking the balance of loving evenness, are minions of strife and often depict tension, attack, challenge, defense, and separation. Under the influence of strife, the internal elements precipitate out from the primal sphere, like cream rising to the top of the milk. The four elements then combine with one another in various proportions, and the world of discrete matter takes form. Isn't that fascinating?
It is fascinating, and I was just thinking about the even odd thing, and it makes sense because 3, 5, 7, the third sphere, the fifth sphere, the seventh sphere on the the seventh isn't. Oh no, that totally fucks that up. Never mind.
Okay. I'll edit that out. Well, fire refers to radiant energy like the light emanating from the sun and the stars. Ovid, in his Metamorphosis, mentions that fire is the lightest and highest element. Its symbol is an upright equilateral triangle. Each element has a particular directionality. Being light and hot by nature, fire and air tend to rise above the surface of the earth. Isn't it interesting how everything all has a rhyme and a reason, and the layers are replicant throughout so many different cultures, so many different writings, so many different arts, so many different modalities? We see the same themes. I think it's quite beautiful. I don't know how that works.
That's what draws me to it.
Right on. There it is. Yep.
Like, it works because they're all describing the same thing, just with a slightly different point of view.
Right on. Okay, well, I'm going to let you go ahead and share what you have on the fire cards, and I'll follow up with what I have in the Tarot. There's a lot more to the Tarot. That was really a beyond the basic for sure. That's what this book is about, getting into more of the minor aspects, like in a natal chart, going a little bit more deeper off the grid. So, all right.
Let's do one card at a time. So I wanted to do the card representing the element fire before we get into the 3 cards representing the 3 fire zodiac signs. And we'll talk about both the Thoth and the Rider-Waite systems, because I primarily use Thoth and Kate is more versed in the Rider-Waite. So in the Thoth deck, the card representing the element fire is called the Aeon. And on the Tree of Life, this card represents the path connecting Hod to Malkuth. So this is a little bit from Lon Milo Duquette's Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. According to Crowley, the Last Judgment trump is now obsolete. The event that it depicted, the destruction of the world by fire, has already occurred. The world we are talking about, of course, is the spiritual age of Osiris. The Aeon card of the Thoth deck depicts the spiritual forces that initiated the next age, the Aeon of Horus. Horus is the god of force and fire, and his ascension as Lord of the new Aeon spiritually destroys the old world by fire. It only looks like the end of the world to those of us who cannot accept the possibility that old spiritual points of view can ever be replaced by new ones. And this transition is said to have occurred in 1904. And just look at the century since then: 2 world wars, the fall of organized religion, the church, rise of spirituality. It's all very Aeon of Horus. And of course, this card depicts Horus. And the general divinatory meaning given in this book, of course, the purpose of this is, if you're doing a reading, all this stuff I just read to you, all the deep spiritual aspects of any given tarot card, they're not going to apply to someone asking you if their boyfriend is cheating on them. So the most generalized divinatory meaning when this card comes up is final decision in respect of the past, new current in respect of the future, always represents taking of a definite step. And what I wanted to ask you about the Judgment card is, does the Judgment card have this part of focusing on the future, or is it all? It seems to be all about the past.
The Judgment card is assigned to Pluto in the Waite-Smith deck.
Well, classically, it would have been fire.
Right. It's got Mars there, and this is where it ties into Scorpio. It's drastic change, release, and a review is what we have going on with the Judgment card. It's basically wherever you are right now in your life, it's coming to an end and it's birthing something brand new. So it's a lot of energy here. It's release, a lot of energy being released, and then this first house thing going on. I really think a Judgment is almost like the 12th house in the wheel, because the 12th house is Pisces and Neptune, and it's the end. It's when we go to the highest of the high, and it's the most inner house, really, I think, even more than the 4. It's a very alone house because you're evaluating, and you're touching that inner man to prepare for the next trip, which is death has to come first, right, before something can be born.
Yep.
So it's tuning in to your higher calling.
Yeah. So the divinatory meaning is essentially the same. So it's interesting in that way. It's a completely different way of looking at it that ends up with pretty much the same meaning. And you'll see that for most of the variations on the Thoth versus Rider-Waite cards, showing those that are different, because it's a different view, but ultimately, in use, the divinatory meaning ends up pretty much the same. So it's interesting in that way.
Yeah.
So did you have anything more to say about the Judgment card, or we can move on to the Emperor?
Well, the Judgment card is assigned to Pluto, and it is, of course, assigned to Scorpio in that way with Pluto, which brings that Mars in. So it's the third eye in the crown chakras. So when we get to the Judgment, there's this illumination that's taking place. The third eye is being activated, the crown chakra is opening, and it's allowing, just an understanding to come in that will allow this rebirthing. So I think it's important. It's a very transitory card, is what I want to say. You get to the universe, which is the next card, the last one.
Yes. Very.
Okay. Ready for the Emperor.
Right. Okay. So the Emperor. We'll notice it connects Netzach to Yesod on the Tree of Life. And I just might add that these path placements, the spheres that they connect, it's not quite what you might think, and it really only starts to make sense with a much deeper understanding of all these symbols involved. And it's only some of them have begun to make sense of me. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you learn about this, the Emperor connecting Netzach to Yesod. I mean, what I noticed right there is Netzach and Yesod, that's Venus and the moon. I mean, they're extremely feminine, and then you have the Emperor, which is, you know, the sulfur of fire, the most masculine part of fire. So, Lama Ludwig's understanding Alice Crowley's thought thorough. Atu 4, the Emperor, represents the sign Aries, where Mars rules and Sol is exalted. The sign, Crowley points out, is thus a combination of energy in its most material form with the idea of authority. Referring to this card, Crowley even goes so far as to actually give us a somewhat cynical lesson in civics. And this is good. He is seated upon the throne whose capitals are the heads of the Himalayan wild ram. And this is quoting from the Book of Thoth directly. He is seated upon the throne whose capitals are the heads of the Himalayan wild ram. Since Aries means a ram, at his feet, couchant, is the lamb and flag. To confirm this attribution on the lower plane, for the ram by nature is a wild and courageous animal, lonely in lonely places, whereas when tamed and made to lie down in green pastures, nothing is left but the docile, cowardly, gregarious, and succulent beast. This is the theory of government. So, the Emperor is the third of the alchemical trumps and represents sulfur. His arms form the triangle and his legs form the cross of the glyph of sulfur, which Crowley tells us is, quote, the male fiery energy of the universe, the Rajas of the Hindu philosophy. This is the swift creative energy, the initiative of all being. Again, very Shakma, if you remember to our Shakma episode. General divinatory meaning: war, conquest, victory, strife, ambition, originality, overweening confidence and megalomania, quarrelsomeness, energy, vigor, stubbornness, impracticability, rashness, and ill temper.
Okay. I have, for when I think of the Emperor, incidentally, I had a very practical reading the other day. I was needing something just very practical. I was just wondering, I'm going to, do a reading on this and see what I come up with. I got the Emperor in reverse. So it was like, you're giving all your authority away in this situation, and there isn't any structure. The Emperor is very much about structure. He didn't get to be the Emperor after all without being able to use his power in his Mars. We see a very mature Aries when we get to the Emperor. You must look at all of the cards that attribute to Aries in the tarot to get a better understanding. How does Aries behave with other planets, and you'll see the growth that takes place for Aries to get to be the Emperor. Incidentally, the Emperor is a major arcana, of which there are 22 cards in the major arcana, and then there's 56 lower cards, and those cards are more about the day-to-day activities, how we interact with one another, the minor arcana, as well as the core cards, which, depending on the deck you use, can be pages, knights, queens and kings, or princesses pages, knights, kings and queens and kings. And then you also have the major arcana with the broad themes, 22 of them. So when you get to number 4, the Emperor, you have a very mature Aries. I just want to point that out. I think that's important. It's a very logical and rational individual that has rules and stability and structure. Also a leader. very much a leader. And when this card pops up, it's dealing with your fire energy and how maybe you need to set some limits on your own behavior and how maybe you need to set some goals, I think is very true also, because Aries is all about that forward momentum energy, and it's cardinal. Even though he's sitting there, doesn't he look like he's ready to get up? Oh, you're not seeing it in the weight deck. But in the weight deck, he's sitting on the throne.
I've seen them both.
Yeah, sitting on the throne with that look like, I need to go. Like, what do you need? You summoned me. Now, what do you want? It's a father figure card. When this shows up, masculinity and fatherhood often come to the front. So if he shows up and you're asking about a parent, it's a very Aryan father. Incidentally, my mom was an Aries moon. That's a whole other animal there. That was an interesting combination. But it does reduce to the number 4, which is one of those even numbers. So he brings this rationality and structure and a need for rules, and with that comes stability. So it's very practical energy here, the practical parts of our life. When the Emperor shows up, your fire is needing some self-discipline. That's what I think. I used to get this card a lot until I started working on some things in the areas that would come up through the years, and I saw it disappear. Do you have that occur with you where if there's a theme going on in your life, it's like the same cards will come up no matter how much you shuffle?
Oh, yeah.
They'll come up in different ways and be like, no, you didn't quite get it the last reading. Look at it more closely this way. Or as you evolve, the card will just go away. I swear to God, man, this happens. Anything about the symbolism of the weight that I think is really, really important to note would be, I don't know how you pronounce this, but it's the Ankh, the A-N-K-H.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, which represents eternal life, and he's holding that firmly in his right hand. And of course, you have his armor on. That's always important to notice if someone is wearing armor, and he does have armor on. And this is saying he's prepared. And he also is protecting himself. And he feels protected. But when someone's wearing armor, what does that mean? He's anticipating a fight. No. Like I said, he's ready to get up right out of that chair.
That's what Aries does.
Yeah, yep. And he's holding a sphere in his left hand, which represents totality and perfection. And it also can represent earthly domain when you see a sphere. So with that, did I have anything that I wanted to say? Aries, cardinal fire, is the root and solar plexus chakras. The root and the solar plexus chakras. And I'm going to go into the chakras in a minute quickly, because this is starting to get to be pretty long. But it is tied to those two chakras. So with that, you want to go to the next card?
Yes. In the thought deck, the card representing Leo is the Lust card, which connects Chesed to Gabora. I should mention in the weight deck, this is strength. On the Lust card, pictures, of course, the beautiful red-haired goddess Babylon riding the beast. And this is what Milo Duquette has to say about it. For 2,000 years, the symbol of the Virgin has been the symbol of the pure vessel and the supreme female spiritual ideal in Western civilization. It is a wonderful symbol, as far as it goes, that deals with the great mystery of the descent of divine spirit into matter. I'll pause here on the quote for a second. If you remember back to our asteroid goddesses episode, where the virgin goddesses were individuals, right? We got deep into what are they actually saying when they say that a goddess is a virgin. Yes, they haven't had sex, but that's not the main point. They didn't have a husband, they didn't have kids, they were able to focus on himself. They were individualized. So he said, as Duquette just says, the virgin concept deals with the descent of the divine spirit into matter. So it's the unity of spirit becoming individualized. Keep that in mind. Continuing. The mystery of Babylon concerns an entirely different concept, that of reabsorption of all evolving life and consciousness into Binah, the great supernal female. So it's the opposite. It's the other way around. It's going from an individual to reuniting with all life. In this mystery, the symbol of the whore, who is indiscriminately receptive to all, becomes the supreme and holy image. Listen to how Crowley's angel of the 12th Aether describes her. Very quick context. Yes, this comes from a vision. You could describe the Aethers. You can research that on your own. Continuing. This is the mystery of Babylon. Now this is quoting from an angel seen in a vision. The mother of abominations. And this is the mystery of her adulteries. For she hath yielded up herself to everything that liveth, and hath become a partaker in its mystery. And because she hath made herself the servant of each, therefore she is become the mistress of all. The supreme spiritual message of this card may be summed up in something like this. Eventually, each of us will come to a level of consciousness so profoundly high that the only level higher is the universal consciousness of deity itself. Our dissolution into the infinite is the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate marriage. Deity lusts for that moment when all her children will return to her. Someday, each one of us will also lust for that moment. So as you see, the lust card, it's not about a sexual lust. That is involved, but that's only a tiny part. It's about the lust that calls to your soul, your being for being incarnated right now, your reason for being incarnated right now. Whatever you get involved in, wherever you get exposed to, and you're like, I have to do that. I have to do that. That's why my heart is beating. That's why I'm in this body. I mean, that's the type of lust that we're talking about here. And the reason it's renamed from strength is the strongest, your greatest strengths will come out if you are pursuing whatever you are that kind of lusting about.
That is so fifth house, Leo.
This is the card representing Leo.
So that's the key.
Yep.
Yeah, the fire has to be fixed here. This is why if you've ever had a fire and you've got a log here and a log there and a log here, it doesn't work, man. You have to put them together.
Right, and of course this is, Leo is the fixed, and the fixed is the salt. The salt is the feminine, and we have, the goddess front and center in this card. Of course, she's riding the beast, which is the divine masculine, but really they're both about lust, but really she takes up all the attention usually. I mean, there's nothing in this chapter in Duquette really about the beast, very little. It's mostly about Babylon here.
Yeah. Well, this is where we have procreation and creativity and recreation. This is where we roar. Like our instinctive drive, our inner strength, right? Our survival, our courage. Like he really grabs it well. Like it's visceral. It's just, it's what makes you who you are. The sun, the isness of all man. And it's our romance. So it's where we really love the things we really, really love. And it's how we play the fifth house. So when the strength card comes up here in the weight deck, it's dealing with that inner strength and being able to harness it. I think it really has the attributes of fixed here, because it's like, look, take these animalistic desires. They're not bad. They're not evil. They're not supposed to be not done. Okay? That's church talk. That's religion that wants to control you and keep you in line. But we have to have logic and spirituality. Like we have to have a higher understanding of the raw energies. Where do we use them? How do we use them? Where is it appropriate to use them? And of course, that's subjective, right?
Right. I'm sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead.
I'm saying part of the general divinatory meaning part of it I see here says energy and action.
Mm-hmm. It's really getting inside your body, like you're alluding to, like really getting down in there and understanding, hey, you know, what makes me tick? What's my body all about? What's going on? Because it's the sun, it's conscious energy. Like, poof. I mean, it's ready to create, like it can. It's right there. It recognizes itself by the 5th house. You've grown, and you're moving towards that 6th house of daily activity, self-improvement, work routines, you know, health and nutrition is the 6th house. Our duties, where we serve, our employment. So you're really starting to grow. By the time you get to the 5th house, the sun is like ready to do something. It's the house that takes Mars and puts it somewhere. That's Leo, fixed fire. It has the ability to take it. And so when this card comes up, you could be having a real conflict. It's asking you, look, harness is the word. You know, don't worry about giving up the beast. Don't ever give up the beast. Harness and tame.
Hell yeah.
Tame the beast. And you can harness it in whatever thing two mutual people agree upon or yourself agrees upon. We know the parameters of what? As long as it doesn't harm, right? As long as it's not violating human rights. I say have at it, however that looks for you. And for another person, let me get on my soapbox, but for another person or entity or individual to tell another person, I'm sorry, if you do these things, you are going to go to hell and you're going to burn forever. I mean, how audacious do you have to be to say something like that? And that was me, y'all. I woke up from that. But that's really something. And there's this fire here in the 5th house that Christianity doesn't like. Trust me. It doesn't want you, that control doesn't want you busting out. And this is why it's the solar plexus again. You know, it's that center part of us, the expression where we come out, and it's asking us to get it balanced and centered. Now, Leo deals with mainly with the root chakra because it's our primal instinctive urges, and then the heart. We talked about this. You know, the spine and the heart, our will, and all of that. So I love the imagery on the strength card. I just think it's beautiful. You know, the woman with the wreath, the flowers in her hair, and she's just bending down and she's closing the mouth. She's not stabbing it, kicking it, putting it in this bridle. In fact, it's wrapped up in flowers. That's what she's got around its neck.
Right. And lions have been traditionally depicted with many different goddesses throughout history, you know, further showing the feminine part of Leo, feminine part of fire.
Right. And a sign of affinity is there, and that represents energy and matter and the indestructibility of it. It represents the wholeness of existence. You've seen this on the number 8 on its side. And you pronounce it, what is it, Leminsk? Leminiscate.
I've never seen that word. No.
Leminiscate. Leminisk.
Yeah, it sounds right.
The number 8 on its side over her head. And it's just showing that her flow, she's got it down. She's got it in rhythm. And that's why she's able to shut the lion's mouth. And because of it, because she harnessed it, number 8 shows to be the number of abundance and leadership and influence. See, if you can make it past the 7s of the Tarot, right? I think Cancers get a bad rap because the 7 is the Chariot, and I'm all about it. But then look at all the other 7 cards; they're not easy. But if you can get to 8, by that time you've earned your honor and your respect and your rewards and your power. There's a lot of power in the number 8. And just this idea of also cosmic consciousness. Spirituality, that's that 8 on its side. I'm going in deeper here into the card and reading. 8 is also associated with the star, which I think is interesting. Reduces to the star. I love the Strength card. It's one of my favorite cards. When it comes out, I just love it. I really, really can appreciate it. It's taught me a lot. That one used to come out years ago. When I was just waking up and just learning the tarot, that card would come out a lot. Then I ended up going into 9, the Hermit, for many, many, many years. Like that card would come up constantly. Like, don't leave. Stay right here. Learn. Unlearn. Then learn. Okay, next. What do you have? Do you have any, you want to go to Sagittarius' card, which is Temperance?
And in the Thoth deck, it is Art.
Okay.
This is very
all right. Is it still 14?
Yes. Pretty sure. I'd have to look in the book. I'm pretty sure the numbers really aren't changed. But anyway, connects Tippereth to Yesod. And this, of course, from One Mile Duquette again. The Black King and the White Queen have now merged to become a single character with 2 heads, and this is the King and Queen from the Lovers card. The White Bride now has black hair and wears the golden crown. The Black Groom now has golden hair and wears the silver crown. His/her arms are exposed to reveal that the body is also counterchanged. So their arm is the opposite color of their face. His/her dress is decorated with both bees and serpents, and he/she stands behind a cauldron into which he/she pours water from a silver chalice from his/her left hand and fire from his/her right hand. Flanking the cauldron, as they flank the Orphic eggs in the Lovers, stand the Lion and the Eagle. They have also made a dramatic change. The lion has turned white, and the eagle is now red, having transmuted to their opposite characteristic by the deal of baptism of fire and water. At the very bottom of the card, the fire and the water exist together in harmony. Crowley writes, but this is only a crude symbol of the spiritual idea, which is the satisfaction of the desire of the incomplete element of one kind to satisfy its formula by assimilation of its equal opposite. Now, I'd like to remind you, Sagittarius is the mutable, so it's the Mercury of fire, the hermaphroditic, and then everything I just mentioned about this hermaphroditic character on the card. So basically this card gets into, so the general divinatory meaning for this card: combination of forces, realization, action based on accurate calculation, the way of escape, success after elaborate maneuvers, about combining opposites.
Absolutely. That looks very much like the weight deck. It is number 14, and it's an angel with 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on the earth, taking 2 cups in its alchemy at its finest, combining them together, making something. The sun is coming up in the back. Over the top of 2 mountains, there's a long path, and she has a triangle on a white garment that this angel is wearing, or he. And so that does show the symbol of fire coming in there, as you can see. And it is called temperance. And it's combining and creating. I see compromise here a lot when this card comes up. Experimenting, I think, also comes to mind in this card. And I think it's about finding integration and balance. It's a time for adjustment when this card comes up, and your fire needs to be altered, perhaps, changed, or perhaps you need to take something else and bring it together. But there definitely is a call for two or more things coming together to create something new and integrating your life with someone else's, or integrating your life somewhere differently in work or in home or in spirituality. But it's bringing all of it together into everyday life, all areas of your life, not like having this separation. And this is where this idea of combining comes into play. And it's a time to maybe take a step back and assess results when this card comes up. It's kind of like a scientist card, and a tweaking. This is why it's mutable fire, like, let's see if this works, and then see what happens. And so it's not a card where you've achieved temperance. It's a card asking you to have some temperance while you're figuring things out. Because the 9th house, which is where Sagittarius lives, with Jupiter, the greater benefit, is the search for meaning, right? It's the higher education, the mind expansion, philosophy, religions.
Spiritual impulse.
Exactly, the super consciousness. It's the opposite of the 3rd, Gemini, air, Mercury house. By the time you get to the 9th, you've expanded. You become Jupiter, and you're out there, and you've learned, and you've traveled, and you're at a different place. So the symbolism, it reduces to a 5. So this is a challenge card, which mutable energy can be. And it allows, 5s always allow for further growth. Whenever you see a 5, just know 6 is coming. And you're on an initial path. You're on an initial struggle maybe, or you've been struggling, or you're starting something new, and there's like this feeling of disequilibrium. You're not like quite feeling like you're on your feet.
Ooh.
Look at the 5s.
I said that.
You see that come out. Seeing old habits when I see 5, passing through the fire when I see 5s, to be made stronger. Learning, movement, represented here when we see 5s, just this, okay, I'm really needing to adjust. So you can really see why this card comes out with mutable fire. I think it's an excellent, excellent card. They really got this right when they chose this card. One of my favorite cards, again, because I have that packed 9th house, and my sun is in the 9th, that I really, really feel drawn towards 9th house themes. And it's the 2nd chakra and the 4th chakra with mutable fire. And again, you said Sagittarius, but I do want to bring into the forefront here that irises show up on this card. I didn't mention that. And irises represent the faith part of it, which brings Jupiter in, and the hope and the courage and the wisdom. And in Greek mythology, Iris was the messenger of the gods. The flower also represents messages and ideas. So it's being willing to, hey, I got to empty this cup before I can fill it and test it with this. But if I keep this cup the way it is, I'm not going to be able to see what could be. So it's a bending when I think of mutability, like being willing to change.
Very good.
I really like that card, as you can tell. I get a little excited about it. So, did you have any other card, or were you going to say something? Because as I was speaking, I heard you comment in the background.
No, it's just what you were saying about 5 and 6 made so much sense. I tend to think about numerology in the Kabbalistic context. You were talking about 5 being uncomfortable. That's Gabora. That's destruction. That's Mars. And you're talking about just wait till you get to 6. You'll get to equilibrium, and 6 is Tippereth, the great equilibrator.
It's amazing. So you learn so much. Somebody was trying to tell us something, weren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some kind of structure going on here.
That's why I'm so in favor of the classical system and not of tarot, and not with the new planets, because it just seems so perfectly constructed over so long of time with like so many great minds working on it. Like I don't feel like I'm qualified to like make a change to it.
I can respect that.
But also at the same time, like I do have the impulse to like, no, I have my own fucking ideas. I'm gonna do shit my own way. Like in my magic, I tend to be like that. Like I don't like to just copy things straight out of grimoires and do everything cookie cutter. But when it comes to systems of ideas and ways of thinking about things, I do like to stick to rigid systems.
That's interesting. I wonder what's in your 9th house. I don't remember.
Well, my Mercury's in Virgo, so I tend to be very practical about certain things like that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I have a couple other cards I want to cover that also have to do with this fire energy.
Okay.
I'll go quickly. That would be the Tower card, which is Mars, number 16. A very important card to look at when it comes to fire energy. We all know the Tower, the sudden shock, destruction. You know, Mars can destroy as well. But you see the Yads coming down from heaven, and Yads represent the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It represents the presence of the divine.
Right. And also, the Yod is present in every Hebrew letter because the Yod is basically, it's just a line.
I heard this. Yes. And the number 7 is presented by the Tower. And 7s represent forces that must be dealt with. Again, here we go. Situations beyond your control, like 7 of Wands kills me, man. That card used to come up too, you know. Dude's in 2 different colored shoes. It's the only card in the tarot in the weight deck with 2 different colored shoes. He's just like really defending his turf. 7 signifying spiritual life, looking within in wisdom, larger meaning of a situation. When this number comes up, it's a time for calling on your deepest inner resources. So you see how the 7 is connected here. Something has happened. It's time to dig in deep.
And remember, inner resources. Remember, 7. The 7th sphere is Netzach, which deals with life energy, life force.
Yes. Mars, Roman god of war. This is the physical energy, action, and assertiveness with power and temper. So what's happened in the Tower is it's being tempered for you. That's what's going on in the Tower. Because the lightning is knocking off the crown, signifying the divine. It's an act. It's a natural consequence. Mars will naturally have a consequence if it's not channeled correctly. It will go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that in that card too. We have the Sun card itself, which of course is number 19. There's the Sun and the Moon in there. The Sun is 18. The Sun is 19. The Child in the weight deck, naked, sitting on a white horse with the Sun in the background. The beautiful, beautiful, bright Sun. A most fortunate card when this comes out. And sunflowers are represented there. When the Sun comes out here in its power, whenever this card comes out, this is a beautiful card. I love the Sun card. This is self-acceptance. This is the ego knowing by the time you get to 19. This is the Sun like, oh, I know who I am. This is what you were talking about with the Lust card earlier. It's this instinctive thing, It's taken that fixed fire and it's launched it somewhere. And it's created a life. And so it's like happy. And it's a card of tremendous light and illumination and revelation. And I think clarity and understanding at the very, very deep levels. It's knowing who you are. It's not being afraid to shine. You see the Child on there is happy and playing. It's a very open energy, a very active energy. Your words are aligning with your actions. You're who you say you are. I have this tattoo on my back, Esse quam videre. In Latin, it means to be rather than to appear.
Mm.
So it's like, be who you are. Don't appear to be something else. Be authentic. That's the sun to me. Like the naked baby on a white horse. It doesn't get any better than that. Like pure, happy fun. Just glee out in the sun and happiness and well-being. And that's fire. That's what you can get with fixed fire. If
right.
you take it and you harness it.
The image of the baby in the sun kind of takes me back to Horus, because he's also called the crowned and conquering child.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the Aeon of Horus is about, rather than a worship of the masculine or a worship of the feminine, it's about a worship of what they can create when they're together, a child. A balance of their energies.
And again, that would be fixed fire, wouldn't it? Creation, children, things we create, things we make. The kings are all fire within the court cards and the minor arcana of the tarot.
Yes.
So whatever the king is in the corresponding suit is that type of king. So if you want to see king at its fire at its finest, coming out in air, coming out in earth, and coming out in water and fire, look at the four kings, because that's the goal.
Well, actually, you have the aces, right? The aces are Kether.
Pure potential. The aces are the pure potential in the seed.
Well, in the Kabbalistic way of looking at it, aces are Kether, and Kether is oneness. It's the supreme. It's the highest of the high, the most high. So really, the aces are the most well-rounded of the suit.
Right, but the aces aren't doing anything. You've just got the element.
Right, but the kings are always going to be the most masculine form of each suit.
Dan, they assigned fire to the kings, not to the queens, because fire is masculine. Fire is positive,
right, but say the
expression.
The King of Cups would be the masculine part of water.
This is correct. And he would be expressing his fire through a watery nature.
Right, but I don't think that's the highest thing, you could aspire to. I would think the more well-roundedness of the aces would be the highest.
Well, the thing is when you have to do something with it, though. It's not doing anything when the aces come out. They're just hands extending it out to you, saying, here, take it. It's a gift. It's a basic root foundation element. Take it and go through the tarot and become the fool and run with it and go through all the stages. So when we get to the core cards, I see that there's a maturity to the fool's journey, and he's actually learned how to harness some of these, especially the queens and kings, how to harness some of these energies that he's been given, because he's become a queen. Not everybody becomes a queen. Not everybody becomes a king. Only those that are higher up, usually, unless it's the Illuminati or like the elite that are out there. But if you take your gifts and your talents and the elements and you do your ascended self and you walk into the fifth and become who you're supposed to be and harness all that, and then change it up a little to really learn and grow till you finally get the 10th, where you're achieving in the world, and this is where your authority is, and it's your public life and recognition. That's where the king shows up. He is a king. That's what he does. But he doesn't get there until he goes through the first 3 firehouses.
Right. So I guess I just don't see the kings and the queens as, dominant or superior to the princes and the princesses. I just see, the kings is fire, queens is water, prince is air, and princesses are earth. I don't think there's I don't see that evolution in that way. I don't see like a hierarchy to the elements. They're all equally important.
They are all equally important, but there's a hierarchy to how mature they are. There's a hierarchy to the elements they've been given and the mixture of elements. Because when you start getting to the core cards, you're mixing elements. You're not just the 8 of Wands or the two of Cups. You're well, actually, there's 2 people mixing there, so that's not the best idea. But you know what I mean.
Interesting.
There isn't an ability to put like the Knight. The Knights are air, correct? Yes, the Knights are all air.
Well, in some decks, yeah. Keep going.
Okay. See, I'm going with the way I guess where my studies have led me in the traditional tarot.
I've come across a few different orders of, if you want to say superiority, or at least sequential order in which the elements came about. I've seen, fire came first, and then air, and then water, and then earth, and then I've seen air, then fire, then water, and then I've seen water first. So maybe there is some hierarchy to it. It's an interesting idea, but I've also seen different hierarchies. So I would still stick with they're all equally important and not really dominating over one another.
No, there's not a dominance, but there's a position and a place and an authority when it's in that place. For instance, the astrology does follow an order. It deliberately starts with fire. It must. It's the first seed. You need fire. You must have it. You must have life. You must have the spark. You must have the beginning. You must have the initial birth before you can do anything. That's why fire is the first house. The second house is earth. We'll get into that when we go into earth, which is next week. There's a reason earth comes next. And then the third house is Gemini, is air. There's a reason air follows, and trust me, I'll go into this. And then the fourth house is water. It's where we can finally begin to manifest something, and I'll explain how that all ties together, but it very much follows a flow. And there's a reason why, esoterically anyway. That's just what I've read. I'm not saying it's absolutely that way. I'm just saying astrology follows the tarot, and then it follows an order. And it follows like, by the time you get to the 12th house, this is where we're in service to humanity. We have self-transcendence. We're sacrificing our life for others because we've become the highest of the high.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Getting off the topic, I suppose. But all of the wands, so Ace of Wands, 2 of Wands, 3 of Wands, 4 of Wands, 5 of Wands, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of Wands. And then you have the Page of Wands, Knight of Wands, Queen of Wands, and the King of Wands.
Yep, fire through each one of the spheres on the Tree of Life, and then fire through each one of the elements, essentially.
Right. Exactly. Those are fascinating cards. If you want to see how your fire is challenged and needs to grow, and as it relates within yourself and within society, take a look at all those wands cards. They all tie into fire. Lay them out like in front of you, 1 through King. And it's really interesting when you do that. You begin to see the story that was trying to be painted and trying to be told. So, do you have anything else on the cards?
Nope, that is everything.
Okay, I have the chakras, but I think it would really take too long for me to go into this because I have a whole nother section, and that's fine. It's just the way that it went down. I don't want to make this too much longer, but I want to share that fire is associated with your third chakra, and the color is yellow, and the crystals that you can use are amber, yellow tourmaline, citrine, and topaz. So anything that's a beautiful yellow color, this is why gold as well can help ground the third chakra. Anything gold, the color gold, around you, wearing gold. But the third chakra has to do with your self-assertiveness and your sense of your power. It's your ability to recognize yourself as an individual separate from the world and yet be able to make an impact on the world. So those are the drives of the third chakra, and it is the solar plexus, which rests right in the stomach. So we call this, as we talked about earlier, fire in the belly. And I came across a book, really crazy. Me and my husband were out. I love to go to bookstores and just look at books, and you never know what you're going to find. And I came across a book just as we were studying for this, Chakras and the Archetypes, Uniting Energy, Awareness, and Spiritual Growth by Ambika Waters, Wauters. I guess you would pronounce it that way. $4. I couldn't believe it. But it was fascinating. I'm not going to go into all this. But she talks about, or he talks about the solar plexus chakra being, of course, self-esteem, self-worth, confidence, your decision-making, and personal power. And he says the dysfunctional archetype is the servant here. And the functional archetype of the solar plexus is called the warrior. And I just want to read this one section because I felt really prompted to share this. And I feel like it needs to be said because I don't know about you, but I've struggled in this area, and this brought such profound insight to me. And here's what he says. How the solar plexus chakra functions. Since this is fire and it's our belly, it's important to learn about this solar plexus. The solar plexus chakra is intrinsically, linked with our sense of self-worth and personal power. Its energy helps us to feel self-respecting, decisive, and confident. When we are submissive or susceptible to the influences of other people, the energy from this center becomes weak, and we find ourselves disempowered. The solar plexus is an important chakra because it controls the intake and outflow of energy, which is generated in our interchanges with others. This allows us to deal with people on both an emotional and instinctual level. When this center is in balance, it gives us satisfying and healthy relationships because we are relating from a strong sense of who we are. When we own our power and accept our value, knowing that we truly deserve the very best for ourselves, we invite people to show us care, kindness, and respect. When we have owned our power, we can then move on to the highest levels of empowerment and deeper bonds of love. When we fail to value and honor ourselves, we find we take the brunt of other people's negativity and sometimes find ourselves poorly treated. When this center is weak, we can create experiences which undermine our self-worth and diminish our confidence. The solar plexus focuses mainly on relational issues. See, I didn't know that, did you?
No, I did not.
Yeah. So fire really is how we interact. At the core, it's our, it's what we do with our fire, but it's very relational.
Well, it makes sense if we're going to say that Venus is fiery. Now that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. And it shows up in the 2nd and 7th house. That's where Venus shows up. The second house is, again, resources, our self-esteem, what we value, our valuables, our material securities. And the 7th is partnerships and marriage and one-on-one relationships with our enemies and our friends, both. We do not think or act in an inferior or superior way to others. We negotiate our relationships from a place of equality, and we attract people who reflect our state of self-love and worth back to us in the most healthy and respectful way. When we connect the solar plexus with the spiritual energy of the crown chakra, we put our relationships into a spiritual context in which they can unfold. This gives us a strong and ordered sense of life that supports peace of mind, personal integrity, and ability to transcend emotional conflicts. The two archetypes representing the dysfunctional and functional aspects of this chakra are the servant and the warrior. They are polar opposites and reflect the ways in which we manifest self-worth and personal power in our lives. And I'm not going to go into this, but he talks about the servant again and the warrior, and it was so incredibly profound because as I looked back and saw where I had struggles out of my abuse as a child, things that had not been healed yet, and I'm so grateful to say I'm in a 100% better place. I don't need to do to be anymore. I can just be without doing, because when I did, I felt worthy. When I didn't do, I didn't have this self-worth. So I was constantly trying to do something to make me feel worthy because I was not felt worthy when I was younger due to the things that occurred to me.
Right. The archetypes of the servant and the warrior really clearly demonstrated how this is, to me at least, how this is the fire center. So a deficiency in your solar plexus chakra, you end up the servant and you end up passive, and too much solar plexus chakra energy, you end up a warrior, aggressive. So I don't know, that point just really clearly illustrated to me solar plexus equals fire center. Like now it's very clear.
Yeah. And I love what he says here about the servant, because I struggled with this in the past, and it was just so beautiful seeing the affirmation rise up in me.
Oh yeah, me too, especially in the
grateful.
past year. I've been able to get more, healthy fire energy. I felt like I was way too passive, way too emotional, letting myself get walked all over. And, of course, your energy comes in what you do. I kept with, my job. I'm an electrician. It's a masculine job. You're forcing my will on physical matter all day.
Yeah.
Bashing holes and shit and drilling holes and whatnot.
Right.
And gotten spiritually close to some masculine spirits, and that's enough to significantly change your energy. And I feel like I've definitely not as passive as I was a year ago. I feel like I'm in a much more balanced place.
That's really cool. The servant needs to know the simple truth that it doesn't need to do or be anything in order to be loved. It deserves love and consideration simply because it is worthy of it. Its value is not tied to what it does, but to who it is. Can you see that? I was like, I tied everything to what I did instead of who I was. And so if you find that any of this resonates, that are listening, and your solar plexus is being challenged, and maybe you've attracted some relationships because your own boundaries weren't in place, because your own fire wasn't where it needed to be, an underactive symptom of the solar plexus being out of balance is feeling alone and isolated, needing constant recognition, having a hard time learning, delaying consistently with psychosomatic problems. Overactive symptoms can be overcritically behavior of others, needing constant change in your day, and excessive stubbornness. So the next chakra is the heart. So there is this idea of balancing and centering the solar plexus.
Before you move on to the heart, I just want to, you just mentioned the psychosomatic problems. I just realized, as I mentioned, I'm in a much more balanced place with the solar plexus energy. And, about a week ago, I was very, very, very stressed out for a reason. And normally I can never eat. Like, my stomach would hurt a lot, and sometimes I couldn't eat for days. But my stomach was totally unaffected for the first time that I was, really anxious, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is wonderful. You're obviously doing something consistently. And you feel your body, when you're out of whack. But that's really good news to hear that. I know that my stomach can get out of whack too. Cancers tend to store things there. You're a Cancer ascendant. You're definitely going to store things in your stomach. And I know that as I've balanced my center, I don't take as many Tums, things like this that you notice, like, oh, wow, that doesn't bother me anymore. It starts to change. There really is a correlation. And I wasn't going to read the heart chakra. I just was going to say the next chakra is the heart. So there is this idea of balancing and centering the solar plexus to then rise up to the heart chakra so you can live as your true, authentic self. Nice. We have to go up from the solar plexus to live our true, authentic selves, which enables us to speak our truth, be our truth, and it opens that third eye, which brings in more to then receive the crown information coming in. So something I wanted to mention that I came across was a ceremony, and I'll go through this quick and we'll close. And it's called the reactivation of fire element ceremony. And it's simple. It's just a ritual and a meditation you can do. And it helps to enable the mind and the body to get to a place of calm and relaxation that will in turn provide the ability to release, observe, and receive. And it has to do with a deeper connection to the right side of our brain, also known as the imaginative mind, that allows for more creative thinking. So it's the more visual and intuitive side of us, the arts, the rhythm, the nonverbal clues, and the daydreaming side. When we activate here, it allows for subconscious level insight and clarity to come in, and it allows for new and positive ideas and ways of seeing problems that wouldn't have been presented had you not allowed it to just kind of play a little bit. 95% of our actions are known to be subconscious. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking and listening to people talk about free will and morality, and it's a whole other rabbit hole.
Right. Well, 95% of what we do, we just do because we do it. We don't even know why we do it. It's programmed in us. It's all subconscious behavior. For instance, are you thinking about beating your heart right now? No, it's autonomously doing it on its own, operating autonomously in the background. Are you thinking of blinking your eyes? No, you're not. It just does. Your body has these automatic systems, but then you also have the subconscious part of the mind that operates all that and keeps it all going. Only 5% of our mind is spent in the conscious mind. So the two hemispheres of our brain are connected together with nerve fibers. They create an information highway. And although there's two sides to the brain, they do operate and function differently. But they're always working together and complementing one another, or trying to. So there's got to be a balance here as well. The left side may pick up the vocabulary to a word, but the right side will add the tone and the color. So this is called candle gazing. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Yeah, I've done it.
You focus on the flame, on the fire, and what it is and what it means to you. And you want to light a candle where you're not going to be disturbed, an open flame in front of you. Sit back a ways and get in a very comfortable position. Dim the lights. And I recommend, staring at the fire and starting to do breath work. And this is where you're breathing in 3 times at the 7 count that you recommended, which I highly agree with, and then releasing the 7 count. Doing that 3 times, staring at the flame, but not staring. Gazing is a better word. There's no plan, there's no initiative, there's just the appreciation of the fire and the way that the flame moves, and allowing yourself to sit there with that flame and gaze upon it. And this activates the fire within you on its own. And if you do this, they say, repetitively, like even 5 minutes a day, you will see your solar plexus begin to balance. You can also, again, put those crystals around you, wear the color yellow, put the color yellow around you. You can just carry a yellow piece of paper and look at it throughout the day, and that stimulates. You know, we shouldn't make it more so heavenly good, so to speak, that you can't use it on Earth in a practical way. You know what I'm saying? Like we have to understand that you can go into ceremony, and we could go into ceremony in 2 seconds. Like, yes, there's preparation, and yes, you should have protection and all these things, but at the end of the day, you're walking with spirit. You're walking with your guides. You're walking in your craft. You're walking in who you are, and you can use it. It's meant to be practical.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've used that fire gazing technique to help get me in a state of mind to scry with the crystal ball.
Well, there you go.
Along with the breathing exercises. Breathing exercises are such a great way of modifying your consciousness. I mean, you don't need anything to do it. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
It is, and it oxygenates the body, so the mind gets oxygenated. And it's said that 120 minutes a week, if you do aerobic exercises, it can help improve learning and verbal memory. Exercising is crucial to helping you manage that solar plexus. Just getting your mind oxygenated through exercise and getting your heart rate up there. Getting creative and expressing your fire. This is something too. If you have, damaged solar plexus, you're not going to want to be active in your fire. So you're going to keep all your fire inside of you, and you're not going to express it. And it can cause overburning within you because you don't have an outlet. This is especially important for boys as they begin to go through puberty and their fire begins to really kick in. It's really important to get them in expressions of their fire. Otherwise, they can start punching holes in walls, things like this. It's just the way it works. So playing a sport and swimming, running up a large hill can help with your solar plexus. Climbing a mountain, drinking water, sitting and enjoying water because it nourishes the gut, nourishes the belly, especially if you're running too fiery. Sitting in cooler baths or in a cooler shower. The William Hoff method, back down to this, that's why he is so freaking amazing. I'm sure his chakras are so in line. It's not even funny. William Hoff, you guys, check him out. So, sex is a great way to end the podcast on this.
Sure.
It totally releases your fiery energy, and it hits that 5th house, Leo, fixed fire, where we can actually create something. And creating children is certainly a beautiful thing to do with our fire, is it not?
Gross.
Oh, come on, man. I love children. That's because you're a single guy, and I'm a mom and a meemaw, and I love babies, so, All right. That's all I got. Could say a lot more, but wow, this is a long one. I'm going to have to do some serious editing.
Did not expect that.
I did not expect it either, but it is the element, and it's the foundational energy. So next week we will...
basics.
Hopefully it'll be next week. Now we're going into air energy, so communication should flow. We should probably be right back in a week and be ready to hop on this bus.
Air? I was thinking water.
Pardon me. Earth is next. I am so sorry.
Earth?
Yes, I'm
water.
Sorry. No. Earth.
Earth is last.
Fire, earth, air, water.
Fire, water, air, earth.
Follow the water. Follow the wheel.
Water is the opposite of fire, so it has to come next.
We cannot have anything if we do not do something with our fire and put it in a container. Then we need to take it and we need to release it. We need to set it out with air. And then we'll have water. And we'll have something to work with here, which is why the home is the fourth house, the roots. It's where we begin, really, as far as the integration of fire, earth, and air. Oh, yes. It's all going to be coming soon. We shall talk about it.
We will.
We will. With that, good night.
Good night.